One day, great woe fell upon the settlement. Unrelenting storms raged overhead. Out of the squall, a giant beast came to gobble up the strongest and most beautiful. Hey everyone, I call this handsome fellow the anemic Gorm. I kind of think of him as my mascot. Like the Black Knight and Scissor Knight that I showed in a previous video, he was painted by Drew Drescher, who did an amazing job as always. This will be an exciting video because we're fighting the first expansion monster and my personal favourite, the Gorm. He's on the Kingdom Death shop right now, so if you have a simulator key, you can buy him for yourself. Let's jump into the game. In this campaign, we've fought the Prologue Lion, lost 2 survivors already, and made a few pieces of gear. We're now ready to hunt our first quarry, but before we can do that, we need to install the Gorm expansion. On the first page of the Gorm rulebook, you can see that to add the Gorm to your current campaign, you just need to add the Approaching Storm story event. You also need to add various cards like the Gorm's monster cards, like AI and hit location and resource cards, and other things like disorders and fighting arts to the game box, but in the simulator this is very easy to do. Me and Bo are set up and ready to go, so let's have a look at the Approaching Storm event that we've now reached. The settlement's weather takes a turn for the worse. A light appears on the horizon. From its origin, roiling masses of storm clouds approach the settlement, soaking everything in perpetual sheets of stale-smelling rain. Sudden flash floods, burning winds, and periods of strobing lightning continuously plague the settlement, leaving survivors in epileptic fits. You may now hunt the Gorm. Add it to the quarry list on the settlement record sheet. Add Gorm Climate to the next lantern year on the timeline. Nominate a survivor. They gain +1 insanity and brave the storm. We nominate Epilucy and Bo rolls.
6.
The survivor stands in the torrent. Pulsing psychedelic lights strike them, bringing them to their knees. In a flash of morbid inspiration, the nominated survivor takes a stone to their own eyes. They suffer the blind, severe head injury and gain +1 permanent speed. We think this is a decent trade for Epilucy, who will be throwing bone darts for the duration of this fight, and now will throw an extra one each time. As usual, we split the survivors evenly between me and Bo, taking 2 each. Bo again takes Elisma, who is our tank survivor, with 2 pieces of rawhide armor and a monster grease, and Epilucy, who also returns from the previous hunt, now having upgraded to some bone darts. On my side, I have Hypertenison, a previously unused survivor who also has some bone darts, and Nordia, who gained +1 luck in the last video. She has a bone blade. We set up the basic hunt events and Gorm hunt events according to the rulebook. At least we try to. I think we put him on the wrong space here. And then begin the hunt. Horizon of Bones. The darkness ahead is filled with steady flashes of green light. Enormous piles of jagged bones forebodingly line the horizon. Inhuman, mournful laughter echoes through the air. None of our survivors have 5 hunt XP and 3 courage, so we roll on the random hunt event table. 81. Field of Arms. The survivors carefully tread along the back of a massive sleeping monster. Instead of fur, it has elongated arms, several of them twitching to whatever dream the great beast is in the midst of. The survivors don't disturb the monster's deep sleep and cross without issue. Itchy palms. The survivors come across a field of huge boulders, worn on all sides with deep, smooth grooves. If any survivor has 3+ understanding, they realize that the Gorms use these stones to scratch their enormous, delicate palms. No one has 3+ understanding, so we roll a random hunt event. Number 8. Wailing Smoke. A constant moan follows the survivors. Eventually, they enter an area shrouded in thick fog, and the wailing reaches a fevered pitch. We roll a d10 for each survivor and determine that Epilucy is the straggler. The fog around her turns black and fills with shapes of tormented faces. She's driven to madness and gains the fear of the dark disorder. She'll put on a brave face until she returns to the settlement, but then she'll never leave the Lantern Horde again. Next, a basic hunt event, and fittingly we roll Gorm's Laughter. The rhythmic wail of a Gorm's laughter reaches the survivors, filling them with fear. The cackling follows them, tormenting them until they reach their quarry. The survivors will take a brain damage for every space on the hunt track until they reach the Gorm. While Elisma and Epilucy have some leftover insanity from the previous hunt, both my survivors go down to heavy brain damage. We roll our final hunt event, Stone Fountain. 2 cupped stone hands rise out of the ground. The hands hold clear, cold water that trickles through the stone fingers in a seemingly endless supply. My 2 survivors are too scared, but Elisma and Epilucy both drink from the fountain, gaining 1 courage. We catch up to our quarry and set up the showdown phase, positioning our survivors to make use of the tall grasses +2 evasion. And the showdown begins. The Gorm's first card is Backslap, a move where he slaps you so hard with his giant hand that you go flying 5 spaces and he spins 360 degrees in the process. We target Nordia since she's the monster controller and really needs some insanity. She takes 1 body damage. Next, Epilusi throws 2 bone darts because of her extra speed, and we draw our first hit location. Mammoth Rump. Epilusi rolls a 6, which combined with the 3 strength from the darts, easily wounds the massive rump. The level 1 Gorm's toughness is only 8. The same as the level 1 White Lion. As a reaction to being wounded, the Gorm performs one of his signature moves, Retch. Retch propels the Gorm back 2 spaces and covers a huge zone with corrosive vomit. Thanks to genius tactical positioning, we manage to avoid the spray. Hypertenison throws a dart but misses, and then Elisma uses his Rawhide Headband to check the next 2 AI cards in the deck. We're worried about the brain damage caused by Strobe, so we put that on the bottom and put Body Check up next. Elisma ends our turn by moving into the tall grass and taking Monster Controller at the change of turn. Now drawing Body Check, the Gorm randomly targets Epilusi, dealing a damage to the arms, knocking her over and sending her flying into a wall. Next, Nordia swings with her Bone Blade, scoring 2 hits, one in the
Big face.
and the other in the mammoth skull. She causes 1 wound and the Gorm turns and full moves away. Hypertenison throws a bone dart, rolling a perfect hit and a crit in the mammoth rear clubfoot, giving the Gorm a persistent injury that gives him a 1 in 5 chance of falling over each turn. Finally, Elisma Rawhide Headbands once again, and since Charge could deal a lot of damage, we place Scratch on top of the deck. On the Gorm's turn, he successfully does not fall over from his persistent injury, and he scratches Elisma for 1 damage. Scratch can be a nasty card because it reduces all armor points at one location to 0 before doing damage, but the joke's on the Gorm because we haven't made our whole Rawhide armor set yet. Nordia misses both of her attacks, but Hypertenison scores yet another wound with the bone darts. Epilusi throws her extra speedy darts and hits the trap, Lure Paroxysm. As a result, the Gorm runs towards her, sends Nordia flying, headbutts her, knocking her over, and then turns to face the remaining 2 survivors that are still standing, and knocks them over as well with its strobing lure. With all of our survivors knocked down, the Gorm has us on the ropes. The moment for revenge is here. However, at the critical moment, his persistent injury plays up and he also falls over. What a game. We had some issues with the knocked down Gorm, so his position might get a bit inconsistent in this footage. Adding insult to injury, Nordia immediately scores a crit in the skull. The Gorm hacks and retches, spitting up his active thyroid strange resource. Hypertenison and Epilusi continue the clobbering with 2 more wounds from their darts. Things are going very well, but it's always good to be safe, so we use Elisma's turn to Rawhide Headband again and place Scratch on top once again. The Gorm manages to stand up and stay standing this turn, but his Scratch only deals 1 damage to Elisma's arms. Emboldened, Nordia strikes with her sword, and her +1 luck gives her a crit against the Gorm's mammoth crowded fangs. Teeth rain to the ground, giving her 1 random Gorm resource and +1 courage. Hypertenison throws his dart for the turn and hits the trap. The Gorm headbutts him to the ground, then turns around and blasts Nordia with Lure Paroxysm. Luckily, she got some insanity from being the monster controller earlier on, so there's no serious damage. Epilusi misses both of her darts for the turn, and Elisma places Backslap on top of the deck, ensuring that he as the tank takes the next hit. Just as he's bracing for the hit, though, the Gorm manages to fall over once again. Keen to end the showdown and get back to the settlement and retire, Epilusi goes on a huge hot streak, dealing 2 more wounds and getting him down to just 1 card left in his AI deck. Everyone else flails around and fails to wound him, but with only Scratch remaining in his deck, he's no longer much of a threat. On his turn, he fails to hit Elisma because of the tall grass's additional evasion, and then Nordia, Hypertenison, and Epilusi all fail to hit him because we weren't standing in the blind spot. Now that there's no point Rawhide Headbanding, Elisma punches him in the face, and somewhat fortunately fails to wound, preventing the Gorm from puking on him and Hypertenison. The Gorm scratches again, destroying Elisma's body armor this time. Having learned her lesson from last turn, Nordia strikes from the blind spot this time, scoring a wound in the mammoth mandible, and failing to wound the mammoth maw. Hypertenison and Elisma avoid another puke spray by sheer luck. Throwing darts up his butt and into his face, fails to yield any wounds, so Elisma tries to punch him in the face and only succeeds in bruising his knuckles. The Gorm has no AI cards left, so he uses his basic action, but rolls Snake Eyes. With the Gorm currently somewhat defanged, Elisma harvests the bug patch next to him, gaining a Cyclops fly vermin, and Epilusi harvests the ore vein on the map, gaining nothing. Nordia strikes him in the butt for the killing blow, well, the hand actually, but a failed wound gets her knocked to the ground. With the monster's blind spot now in front of him,
hit.
Hypertension walks up and scores a hit, drawing...
Fluorescent death blow.
Death blow!
Holy shit. I'm so scared.
Go!
If you successfully wound a monster and the death blow is its final wound, you get a special reward, in this case the pure bulb. But you need to roll a bit better than that. Oblivious to the drama playing out behind his butt, the Gorm basic actions Nordia causing a leg and body damage. Thankfully she has one survival left to avoid a severe injury. Nordia scrambles to her feet and tries once again for the killing blow.
Big head. Fail. Goiter. Killed.
Nice.
So, in the aftermath of the hunt, Nordia and Hypertension gain their first hunt XP, and Elisma and Epilucy gain their second. Elisma gains the Mighty Strike fighting art, and Epilucy gains +1 strength. She's becoming a pretty sweet survivor at this point, but remember she's retiring at the end of this hunt. We also gain 4 basic and 4 Gorm resources. The first time the Gorm is defeated, you add both the Gormery and the Gormchemist to the settlement locations, and you also gain the Negredo innovation. We'll take a look at all 3 of those in the next video. For our resources, we drew a couple of bones and hides, and lots of organs, including 2 love juice, which will be good for getting our population up, and the Gorm resource Milky Eye, which allows us to give 3 insanity to one of our survivors. I give it to Hypertension since his insanity is running low. And we drew the Dark Dentist settlement event, which for us isn't going to do anything, because we don't have enough resources to use it yet. We'll look at it in more detail in future. So there's the Gorm. I've probably fought the level 1 Gorm about 10 times now, and as long as you position yourself carefully to avoid the Wretch, and make sure to bring a bit of evasion and stand in the tall grass, the fight is quite easy to manage, especially with a dedicated Rawhide Headband survivor. Still, we were very lucky in this fight as well. I do want to mention that we've found the level 2 Gorm to be much, much harder, as we'll hopefully see later on in this campaign. We'll be able to make some really nice gear with the drops that we got from this Gorm, but I'm going to save that for the next video. That video will be about how you can use the Gorm expansion to get a massive lead in the early few years of a Kingdom Death campaign. We'll pick up where we left off the settlement phase in that video. We'll also look for the first time on this channel at the Screaming Antelope. I also plan to make another video a bit more like my Gambler's Chest one, to tide us over until it arrives. That video reached a lot more people than I expected. Thank you to everyone who watched it, and thank you Adam and Team Death for featuring my video. See you next time.